Are you tired of all of your Pokemon getting Thunder Waved by Clefable or by Gyarados in Pokemon Legends ZA? In today's discussion video, we're going to talk about why this phenomenon keeps occurring and what can be done about it. So to get it started off, let's talk about one of the biggest differences in this metagame compared to some of the previous ones. And that is the prevalence of high speed, high special attacking Pokemon. Now, if I'm a physical attacker, the best and most obvious way to nerf me is to burn me, right? If I have a Dragonite on the field and it's got banned at extreme speed, right? How do I get rid of this Pokemon that's a threat? I'm just going to burn it. As soon as I burn it, it's going to have all of its attack stat halved and it's no longer a threat. But if there's a special attacker on the field, I cannot burn the special attacker and have its special attack. If Frostbite were in the game, then we could have that option, but Frostbite is not in the game, or at least not in the way that people were hoping it was going to be, right? They changed the snow mechanics, they left the freeze mechanics normally, and they had the opportunity to change freeze into Frostbite. They did not do that. So since we don't have that, then there's really no way to drop a special attacker's special attack stat. This is even compounded by the fact that physical attackers can get intimidated, whereas special attackers cannot get intimidated. There's no special intimidate. So if I'm dealing with the Legends ZA metagame, something like Chandelure, it's pretty slow. Base 90 speed, you're going to probably have something on your team that outspeeds it. So we're not going to worry about that. Scarf Hoopa is a little annoying, but Scarf Hoopa is like a mixed attacker, so that's too much in the weeds. Let's talk about Delphox. Mega Delphox is 159 special attack, which already you can see it's not even in the top 5 Pokemon in terms of being sorted by special attack, which tells you how dire the special attack situation is in this metagame. 134 speed, there's very few Pokemon that will outspeed a Mega Delphox, and Mega Delphox can actually punish Pokemon like Crocodile, who are locked into Earthquake, because it gets the Levitate ability. So a really nasty Pokemon to face up against, and one of the best and fastest ways to just completely neuter this Pokemon is to have that speed stat by Thunder Waving it. Once it's Thunder Waved, then I'm much more likely to have a Pokemon on my team, like a Garchomp, that can now outspeed it and one-shot it with an Outrage for Garchomp's case. Obviously, it's not going to be able to Earthquake it, but an Excadrill would. And so Excadrill with Mold Breaker is another Pokemon that's going to get overrun by Delphox one-shot with Flamethrower, and having the ability to Mold Breaker Earthquake it after a Thunder Wave is really nice. Of course, we've got Charizard, reasonably fast. You're probably going to be able to outspeed it with Greninja, but depending on the moves and how much HP it has, Hydro Pump in the Sun is not going to do as much as you would like, and Dark Pulse is maybe going to flinch. Better to have that Thunder Waved. Floette is actually sort of a scary Pokemon because a lot of them run Substitute, so you can't actually Thunder Wave it, and it runs Substitute because there are so many Thunder Wavers out there. So that is a bit of a danger. Mega Dragonite is another good example because Mega Dragonite often runs Agility plus 2 or 3 attacks, and having the ability to Thunder Wave it, of course it could Agility up even further, but just having it stay at that base 100 speed means that maybe I can go into my Ice Beam Greninja and outspeed and kill it from there. So Thunder Wave is really valuable for that. Mega Frostlass, 140 special attack, 120 speed. Not many guys outspeeding that. Yes, Delphox will outspeed it. Yes, Greninja will outspeed it. But if your team doesn't have a Mega Delphox or a Greninja of some sort, you're not going to be able to outrun this guy. And with Nasty Plot and the moves at its disposal, Mega Frostlass is one of the scariest Pokemon in this metagame. Having the ability to Thunder Wave it, really nice. Alakazam technically is another one, but you don't see it as often, but I would count it. Mega Greninja. Greninja got a massive buff this generation, or in this game, by getting Nasty Plot. In previous generations, Greninja wasn't bad, but it wasn't great because it had no way of boosting its special attack. And so it had Swords Dance and it could boost its attack, but you never ever ran a physical Greninja, really. Special Greninja is where it was at, and you couldn't boost its special attack outside of the Battle Bond giving it better stats in previous gens, or Battle Bond giving it a +1 to special attack in this gen. However, now with Nasty Plot, Mega Greninja, or even just Battle Bond Greninja can get really, really strong. And so, you know, Unaware Clefable still almost getting 2-shot by Sludge Wave, if it's Protean especially, and getting 2-shot absolutely no matter what, if it's Magic Guard, Clef, and maybe even 1-shot. So you really have to watch out for Greninja. Gengar's, Starmie is a funny one because it's a mixed attacker, so yeah, it's actually more of a physical attacker, but it has that Thunderbolt. And if it has Thunderbolt or Ice Beam, or maybe both, yeah, your guys like Bulky Dragonite or Gyarados or Skarmory, they're not going to be able to defeat Starmie. So I count it somewhat as a mixed attacker and a special attacker as well. But also, if it's Mega Evolved, it can now get Thunder Waved and it'll stick on it. And then you only have to worry about Aqua Jet, and that's a lot more manageable. And after this, the list sort of is dropping off, right? So we don't need to worry too much about the rest of these guys. But the point is that these Pokemon are really scary, and with the exception of like what Mega DNC and Substitute Mega Floette, most of these guys can be Thunder Waved or are already slow. So having the ability to Thunder Wave those guys is an effective way of dealing with a potent special attacker that's really fast, that your team maybe can't outspeed, or maybe if they can outspeed it, they can't hit it for super effective damage or something, right? Like in the case of Agility Mega Dragonite. So that's the first reason we're going to list for why there's so many Pokemon are running Thunder Wave. Just so we can be on the same page, what are the Pokemon that are running Thunder Wave that are also viable? So we obviously have Clefable. Clefable is the premier Thunder Waver in this tier, and you're going to see most Clefable running Thunder Wave just because it's that good. Gyarados is running Thunder Wave on bulky sets, and most Gyarados are running the bulky sets, although there's been a lot more experimentation after the initial first few days where it was mostly being the bulky guy. Because now there's so many guys running Thunderbolt, right? If this is your Spadef wall, you can't wall something like Frostlass who has Thunderbolt, for example. And so maybe you want to run a more offensive Gyarados and just say, okay, I'm not running the rest talk set, and I'm running Earthquake, Ice Fang, Liquidation, or whatever. But if you're running a bulkier set, you either have Dragon Tail or you have Thunder Wave. And the Dragon Tail prevents setup by phasing Pokemon out, and the Thunder Wave prevents setup in the sense that now that you're slow, I can just go into any old attacker and outspeed you. And one of those two moves is basically required on Gyarados if you're running the bulky set. Meowstic is like whatever. Glowking and Slowking run Thunder Wave. They're pretty commonly seen with that move. Umbreon often runs Thunder Wave. Umbreon got Toxic back, right? And then this is Nat Deck, so Umbreon obviously has Toxic. And yet, despite having Toxic, it elects to run Thunder Wave in this tier. Why is that? Because of the reasons we're going to list. And actually for Umbreon specifically, you see that 130 special attack, special defense stat. Yeah, those special attackers do not like Umbreon, and the ability to come in with Umbreon and get them slowed is really good. If we just pop our heads down to UU, there's not a ton of Pokemon down here that are being used, although really there should be, because I mean look, Mega Charizard Y is down in UU, and Gallade with Sharpiness is down in UU. That's pretty nasty. Technically Electros can spam Discharge if it wants to. It may or may not want to, depending on how fast it is. Why is Mega Frostlass in UU? I don't think that should be a thing. Oh, also, I forgot to mention Glare on Zygarde. Zygarde technically does run Glare. I wouldn't really count that in this conversation just because that's sort of an oddity. And usually, Zygarde wants to be spamming 1,000 arrows. I guess you have Stunfisk with Static and stuff. So it's mostly just Clefable and Glowking and Umbreon, and Gyarados. But you'll usually have at least one of those on your team. If you don't have one of those on your team, it's probably not that strong of a team. Let's talk about the second reason why there's so many Thunderwave Pokemon and why Thunderwave is so prevalent in the metagame. And that is the ground types. So if we look at the current viable ground types in OU, we have 4 of them listed here, and they all are quite viable. Excadrill is, of course, a resist to Moonblast and to Sludge Wave from Cloaking, right? But it has to fear the Flamethrower Clefables, which is not an unheard of set. They come in, you Flamethrower, you 2-shot them, right? That's scary for them. Of course, they get maybe a free Iron Head once they have switched in, but they can't pull that stunt multiple times. So that's not a good thing for them. And then Glowkings can also run Focus Blast or Flamethrower. Flamethrower has been seen more commonly. That one is a bit better, but they can also Chilly Reception on you, so they're not really scared of you. And then, of course, Excadrill does not want to come in on a Gyarados. So, and then the other 3, Garchomp, Crocodile, Zygarde, all of them weak to Moonblast, weak to Waterfall or Ice Fang from Gyarados. And then Ice Beam from Glowking, which is another thing Glowking can run, and Scald from Slowking. If it's just normal Slowking, all of these guys do not want to come in on Scald. So your ground types, the main ground types on your team that would normally be there to absorb Thunderwave, obviously you can't absorb Zygarde's Glare, but again, most of the time Zygarde's not going for Glare, so we're going to ignore it. They do not switch in to the Thunderwavers. Yes, Excadrill can switch into a Clefable once it's known that it doesn't have Flamethrower, and that's probably the best option. But aside from that, Moonblast, 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 and you don't want to switch in. If we come down to UU, Stunfisk is technically a switch in, but Stunfisk also has, Stunfisk level stats, so be advised. Steelix, I'd say, is probably not as good as Excadrill because it doesn't provide the same level of utility. But I want to see somebody use a Steelix team. I think Steelix is a pretty cool Pokemon, and it doesn't get enough love for what it is, which is a ground steel type. Fantastic typing, pretty decent bulk, especially on the defensive side, has a cool Mega, and with the T-Tar, you could make some really fun Steelix sets, I think. Hippowdon is not really usually seen, usually see Tyranitar, but frankly, Hippowdon maybe should be seen more, I think, because of this very reason that I think it could do a better job of absorbing Thunder Waves. And then Diggersby is seen, but it also really has bad defenses, so it doesn't want to come in on Moonblast. Although it could come in on Moonblast. The problem is then, if I have a Clef Scarm core, which is a very common core, then you're going to have to wonder, okay, now I've gone into my Diggersby, taken 30 to 40% from the Moonblast. Now are they going to go into the Rocky Helmet Skarmory? Do I have to predict that and go for Thunder Punch? Do I have to click U-turn? Do I have to hard switch out? It's a pretty nasty core to try to break if you're Diggersby, which is why Diggersby is not OU. And then nobody uses Camerupt because you're not going to use normal Camerupt, and Mega Camerupt takes up a Mega slot, and it's only good on Trick Room anyway. So those are your ground types. Then if we get into Shed Skin, these technically also could absorb Thunder Wave, right? Arbok would be a great switch into Clefable, but not really into Glowking. And actually Arbok can spam Glare, and you have seen a few teams on the ladder that do have Arbok for that very purpose, but that's more of a meme than anything else, and you have to decide between Intimidate and Shed Skin. And the Mega Scrafty, of course, enough said about that. Can't switch into Clef now, obviously. And then the other guy is maybe Gyarados. It could switch into, and it could maybe switch into Glowking, and even maybe Slowking. So I think that is really one thing that Scrafty could do, is be a Thunder Wave absorber on your team, especially because it gets Shed Skin as a Mega. But if you want to use the Mega Scrafty, you're gonna have to have that be your Mega, and there's so many other good Megas. That's a huge opportunity cost. And moreover, the most common Thunder Waver, which is Clefable, you're not able to absorb it from that. So you'd have to have a specific dedicated Clefable switch in, maybe a Skarmory, maybe something else, that you just resign to the fate of having Thunder Wave. And then finally, let's talk about Heal Bell. Heal Bell is technically capable of being ran on multiple Pokemon, but it isn't usually seen. outside of maybe the occasional Umbreon. Remember on this channel a few days ago, we had a little greedy Umbreon set with no Protect, and in lieu of Protect, we had Heal Bell. The problem with that, of course, is that I didn't have Protect, so if my opponent knew that, then I could never get a safe Wish off with Umbreon. But Umbreon, of course, is a weird matchup into Clefable because unless it's Life Orb Clefable, Umbreon is actually pretty tanky on the Spidef side, and if you're invested in Spidef, like mine was, you actually don't really care about Moonblast too much. The problem is, of course, you don't do anything back to Clefable, so you have to watch out for that. Aside from that, it's good into Slowking, good into Glowking, and you can heal Bell. Good into Gyarados, I guess, if you have Foul Play over knockoff. But it's still gonna get, it's gonna force the Gyarados to rest, and then you're gonna have to switch out and hope it doesn't get Sleep Talk. It's okay though. I think Umbreon's fine, and actually having Heal Bell support means that you can deal with the Thunder Wavers using other Pokemon on your team, then you just come in later and Heal Bell, which is nice. The problem is that which one of these guys are you going to use? Clefable has 4 move slot syndrome and really needs the other moves it has, so almost never do you see Heal Bell on Clef. Dragonite is much better suited to being an attacker or defogger at times, but never a Heal Beller. Meowstic is not ever really seen and is just gonna get pursuit trapped by Crocodile anyway. And Slurpuff is more or less the same thing. Both of these guys are suicide leads. And Vapo is an interesting one because it does have some interesting stuff going for it. It just doesn't have the same bulk that Umbreon has, I think, is the main thing. Yeah, it has a higher HP stat, but 60 defense is not great. So if it's, for example, if I'm facing into a Greninja, well, yeah, I can come in, I can be immune to its water move, and maybe if I'm especially defensive, then I'm not going to take much from Dark Pulse. But first of all, if it's going to set up, then I'm going to have to spam Haze. So if I have Haze, Wish, Protect, and then Heal Bell, no, I don't have an attacking move, right? I can't afford to drop that, so I have to drop Haze if I want to be able to have Heal Bell, and then I am set of fodder. So Vapo's not the strongest when it comes to using Heal Bell. And then after that, we have to get down to the lower stuff like anything down here? No. Nothing down here is worth running Heal Bell on, unfortunately. So that's the ground type situation and the other guys that might be good at absorbing or mitigating Thunder Wave. Let us now move on to the next point, which is an absence of poison attackers or poison setters. So if we look at the poison type, generally speaking, there are only really 2 poison types in OU. Gengar, which never really uses Toxic. If it goes for a status, it goes for Will-O-Wisp, right? Technically, Gengar could go for Toxic, and it would have 100% accurate Toxic. That would be nice, but Gengar goes for Will-O-Wisp Hex if it does that at all. And Cloaking could have Toxic Spikes, or it could have Toxic. But why is it running Thunder Wave? It's running Thunder Wave because it's more valuable than the other, than the Toxic, and for reasons we've discussed and for reasons we will discuss. Those are my 2 poison options. You can run Garbodor, Mega Dragalge, maybe. Some of these other megas or poison types are not bad. It's sort of funny looking at this list how many poison types are here that have a mega, right? Arbok is garbage, Ariados is garbage outside of Sticky Web. And when I did run a Sticky Web Ariados, I was doing some testing with the team. I had Toxic Spikes, and that was actually not bad. That is the reason to use Ariados over Slurpuff, is it has Toxic Spikes and it has Sucker Punch. And so Slurpuff is more often seen, but I think Ariados has a place. And then you have Mega Beedrill, Mega Dragalge, Mega Scolipede, Mega Venusaur, Mega Victreebel. A lot of megas on this list, and they're all in the lower tiers. Why is that? There's one Pokemon, his name is Skarmory. So yes, Mega, which one is it? Mega Victreebel has the buffed Corrosion, right? And can hit these steel types. Well, it's still not hitting Skarmory for very much. And Skarmory can always whirlwind it out if it has to. Or if it has Brave Bird, then Wobetide E, because you're in trouble. Mega Venusaur I think is pretty good. It just doesn't see much usage. And Mega Scolipede can't do anything in this metagame. Mega Scolipede has such cool options now. It has U-turn, and it has a bunch of other things it can do, but it can't do any of them as long as Defog Skarmory is in the tier, and so it is down here. So Poison's generally not good outside of Gloking, which is quite good. Let's also talk about the value of a Poison type. So Poison types usually are used for two things. One, opposing Poison types. Well, we just covered the fact that there aren't really much Poison types in general, so I don't need Poisons for Poisons. And then the other option is for Fighting type. So if we look at Fighting types in the OU tier, Chestnut. And frankly, I don't even see that many Chestnuts. So I bet if you were to redo the tiering now based off of usage, you wouldn't even have Chestnut in OU. Barbarical, not often seen. Yes, is Barbarical a threat? Absolutely, Barbarical is a threat, but it's not often seen. Phalanx, never seen, and not really as much of a threat, frankly. Mega Embor, likewise. Technically a threat, yes, but not much of a threat. Mega Gallade, now there's a threat. With the sharpness on Mega Gallade, 110 speed, 165 attack. Sacred Sword, Sacred Cut, Night Slash. Really, really scary. Not often seen though, funnily enough. Mega Halucha is similarly pretty threatening, but not often seen. Mega Lopunny's been picking up a lot of usage. It shouldn't be down here in UU, it should be in OU. It got buffed with the Mach Punch and the Swords Dance. So that one has been picking up usage, and I have seen it. But most of these guys you don't usually see, is the main point. How many times are you going to play on the ladder? Are you going to see Mega Barb, Mega Phalanx, or even a Mega Gallade? Not very often. It's usually going to be another guy. Mega Lopunny is the one I've been seeing the most of, and I never see Mega Metachan or Mega Scrafty. And Mega Lopunny doesn't really care about Slowking because it has the return for frustration, right? And so if you can just hit it for a +2 normal move, well, then my Poison type isn't doing anything. So the Poison's value in blocking that particular type is no longer there. Obviously, similarly, something like Mega Gallade could always hit a Gloking with a +2 Psycho Cut or Night Slash, and then the Gloking goes down. So the Fighting type isn't that common. The Fighting types that are common completely trounce the Poison type counterplay. So Poisons are not valuable, and Poisoning is also not valuable. So when it comes to Toxic Spikes, for example, they don't do much. I have a Magic Guard Clefable or Magic Guard Alakazam. I have Excadrill or Aegislash or Hoodra, very common Pokemon, Steel type wise. Of course, I could have a Skarmory or a Dragonite, which are off the ground anyway. I could have my own Gloking and absorb the Toxic Spikes. And Volcanion often runs Boots. And so there are a few Pokemon that you could Toxic, and it could be nice. For example, Mega Starmie, you get it poisoned. Now it's taking like 12% per turn when it comes in. That's not bad, but you know, I'd prefer to Thunder Wave Starmie so I can actually outspeed it and one-shot it instead of waiting for the poison to whittle it down while it is doing massive damage to my team. Right? Much better to Thunder Wave it. And so Toxic Spikes don't do that much. Let's talk about just Toxic then. Well, if I go for Toxic, then I'm just gonna go to Skarmory or Scissor, right? Or Hoodra or Excadrill. I have or Clefable again. I have poison absorbers very commonly used that do not care about normal Toxic, and as opposed to Toxic Spikes, which can be set up, and then later on they'll hit the Greninja as it switches in, or they'll hit the Floette even as it switches in, which would be one of the better options, frankly. Normal Toxic cannot be used. It has, in advance, it has to be used against the Pokemon in front of it, and as long as I know you have that move, and a lot of times the Pokemon that are going to run those moves are going to be Pokemon that can't really beat something like a Hisuian Goodra. Again, unless, you know, it's like a Corrosion Victory Bell or something, in which case, you know, that's cute. So in terms of statuses in general, Toxic, not really that valuable. And water moves like Scald, usually not great either because Gyarados is in the tier. So we've got Pokemon like Volcanion, right? Volcanion comes in, goes for Steam Eruption. Pretty scary, but Volcanion can't touch but have Gyarados. but Gyarados can always just rest it off, and so doesn't really do too much. And so Thunder Wave is a pretty good status overall. Yes, of course it can hit the Gyarados, and then the Gyarados can just go for rest, and that often happens. That is one way of mitigating it. But if I can hit other guys on your team, then we're in business. Whereas something like Toxic, you usually have at least 1 or 2 immunities. But the immunities to the Thunder Wave is a ground type, right? And the ground types are not good. While I'm thinking about it, let's just quickly mention electric types. So in the OU tier, there are 0 electric types. There is 1 electric type that is good in OU, and that is Mega Electros. I think Mega Electros should be OU in terms of how good it is, because Ion Battery as an ability is sort of broken. You keep your Levitate, you get a Specs boost, which is frankly too much. It should have just been like a life orb boost or something. 1.5 is insane work. And actually, I think Mega Electros is super scary in the OU tier. And part of the reason why it's so scary is because not many teams prepared for electric types, because not many teams have electric types or electric moves in general. It's not a very commonly used move, which is one of the reasons why Mega Frostlass is so scary. Because if your Spadef tank is Gyarados, well, it has Thunderbolt, and it will Thunderbolt you. If we look at the rest of these Pokemon, Mega Ampharos, not a good Pokemon, really slow, and yeah, it's fluffy, I guess that's cute, but it doesn't really do much good in the current metagame. Dedenne, obviously, enough said about that. It's not a good Pokemon. Emolga, my favorite Pokemon ever, not a good Pokemon. Heliolisk, another favorite Pokemon, not a good Pokemon, unfortunately. Very weak and not that fast comparatively to other Pokemon. Jolteon has seen some usage, but besides alluring voice, it doesn't really have too much going for it. Mega Manectric doesn't really see much usage either, which is unfortunate. It needs hidden power to be good. And then Raichu. I've been playing with a Raichu team just to see how good it is. I'm using a physical Raichu. It's not that great. I have seen a Stunfisk used before on Blunder's channel, and it was okay. Mostly because teams aren't prepared for electric type. Anyway, because of that being said, electric is the other immunity to Thunder Wave, and there's only 1 Pokemon on this list that has any usability in the OU tier. Really, in my mind, Jolteon does not count. And so Thunder Wave, Mega Eel could eat that up, but you have to have Mega Eel, and you only get 1 Mega slot, so not going to see much usage. So in terms of status, Thunder Wave is pretty free, and no other status has that kind of freedom currently. Let's move on to the next point, which is that this metagame is very offensive, generally speaking, as opposed to other metagames where people want to see a little bit of hyper offense, they want to see a lot of offense, a lot of bulky offense, a little bit of balance and stall, right? But all team archetypes should be viable is the general mentality that a lot of OU people want. Other tiers, that they don't care as much about that. For example, Little Cup, stall, not really viable, at least not last time I checked. But nobody really has a problem with that because nobody in the Little Cup wants to play stall. But the people who run OU have this mentality that all archetypes must be viable, and so they have to balance around that accordingly. In this metagame, you only have the Pokemon that you have access to, and there's not a lot of them. So in terms of balancing, there's not much you can do. And right now, setup, very scary, very potent. Offense in general, very scary, very potent. So you really only have 2 options. You either on hyper offense or some kind of offense, which is like, just, I'm gonna hit you with all my guys, even if I don't necessarily have a dedicated suicide lead with screens, whatever. I'm just gonna have a bunch of fast guys. They're gonna all be faster than you, and they're going to set up, and they're gonna try to one-shot you until they die, and then I'll go into my next one, right? That's sort of the current metagame. And actually, that kind of offense is better than hyper offense currently because getting up your hazards with Meowstic or Slurpuff isn't really that great. You can always just go Skarmory or Excadrill, get rid of those hazards, right? And there's no Golden Go to block it. So that strategy is not as strong. Also screens, there's no Light Clay. so screens aren't good either. So normal offense is usually where people are going. Balance is the other option, where you have like one, or I guess I should say bulky offense, right? Bulky offense is good, where you have like 4 guys that are big and fat and they can take hits, and then you have like a couple guys that are actually offensive oriented. Like you have a Greninja, and then you have a Skarm, Clef, plus Umbreon, plus something else like a Glowking or whatever, I don't know. Then stall is actually pretty bad. So if we look at what is in the tier, there's not really unaware. So unaware is just Clefable, right? Normally in other tiers, you would have Pokemon like Skeledirge, Dondozo, and Clodsire. And those would be staples on a stall team. You have to have at least one unaware Pokemon on a stall team in order to be good. Quagsire, I guess, is there too. Because if a Pokemon sets up and tries to sweep you, you've got to have some way to block it. Of course, Mold Breaker Excadrill sort of means that if I set up a sword stance on my Excadrill, you're toast, and a Clefable is not a sufficient unaware wall for stall. Now, in terms of what stall tools there are, you do have Sableye, right? This was known as a really strong stall Pokemon before. You have Skarmory, you have poison types like Glowking. You have to type Glowking all the way in for it to actually accept it for some reason. And then you probably could toss in another guy. I'm not really, frankly, quite sure what you would run on this team. Maybe I toss in a Gourgeist so that I have something for Excadrill, because that Clefable is not going to tank it. And then I would toss in like a Heal Bell or like Umbreon, right? Maybe this could be some kind of stall team. The Sableye means never lose to Mega Malamar. You've got Clefable for Unaware. You've got the Gourgeist for Excadrill, especially Mold Breaker Excadrill. You've got Glowking. If it's Spadef, it can probably tank hits from Electros and Sludge Bomb poison it down. You've got Skarmory for Dragonite and other guys. Right, this could be a stall core, and actually that looks sort of nasty, but you don't really see guys on the ladder running it because stall just isn't that good when you're facing down something like Greninja, right? If we look at that team versus something like Mega Greninja, I don't know. And then I go +2 with Nasty Plot. I got Gunk Shot or Sludge Wave. We're on Sludge Wave. We're on Low Kick, Nasty Plot, and Dark Pulse. I mean, I guess maybe this particular set would get walled by maybe the Sableye or something. We'll put Hydro Pump on it, make it fully special. This kind of thing will sort of just run this down. Because the Clefable, yeah, it would have the Unaware in this particular scenario. Sludge Wave could potentially two-shot it, especially if it goes for Sludge Wave hard, right? Because I don't need to set up in front of the Clefable. If I know the Clefable is coming in, I just go for Sludge Wave. Now it's a stab move, and you're in major trouble. Bonus points if it's modest. Something like that would obviously be an issue. Of course, you have other Pokemon like Taunt on Crocodile and other things like that. And Hoopa. Hoopa, of course, is running around everywhere, and that's a really good Pokemon into stall because I just click moves, and you really have no switch-ins, and you can't protect for like Wish Umbreon, for example. And then, of course, there's Magikarp Clefable, which makes stall really annoying to play because you have a hard time breaking opposing Magikarp Clefable. And so because stall isn't that great, then Thunderwave is more viable because for stall teams, for example, I would prefer to have something like Toxic. Try to get some residual damage going on these guys. But I don't really have to do that if there's no stall on the tier and everybody's just running offense or bulky offense. Now, there's a couple other differences from Gen 9 and other gens like that, like Gen 8, Gen 7, that we need to consider that would lead to offense being really good. One of the big things we don't have in this current metagame is unique typings, right? We need Pokemon like Heatran or Gliscor or Galarian Weezing, right? These Pokemon have unique typings. If we look at Galarian Weezing, is really nice. It's got the Levitate with or Neutralizing Gas. with the immunity to dragons, immunity to poison. You've got Gliscor, which we don't have that or Landorus. So this is immune to ground, immune to electric, and especially when you're in Poison Heal, you can just have this really long sustain, and that will help against offense a lot. Pokemon like Zapdos is another unique typing, and yes, technically we have Emolga in the game, but Emolga does not count. It is not Zapdos. Zapdos is unique typing, means that you're immune to Thunder Wave, you're immune to ground. These kinds of things are really nice to have when you're trying to beat down offense. You have the static, right? Which, you know, there's again that Thunder Wave, but at least that would take down the temperature of the metagame. And it would also help in stopping some of the brain dead cores that you have to run, like Skarmory, for example. Skarmory can't do anything against Zapdos. The only Skarmory that can beat Zapdos is an offensive Mega Skarmory with Rock Slide. And if Zapdos were in the tier, you would actually probably only see Skarmory running Rock Slide, or you would have to run like Defog, get the heck out of their sets, because it wouldn't be able to like have Iron Press be a valid set, because Zapdos would just come in and blank it entirely. Another big problem in this tier is there's a big BST disparity. So in a normal metagame, what do you have a lot of? You have a lot of legendaries. But let's look at the legendaries in this metagame, not counting pseudo legendaries, because those aren't quite the same. We have Hoopa, that's 680 BST. Hoopa is not a good defensive Pokemon though. And then we have Volcanion, and Volcanion's not great defensively, but it is something, I suppose. And Zygarde, which has awful defenses and not really that great of an attack stat. Zygarde is entirely carried by his one move, and if it didn't have 1,000 arrows, you would never ever see Zygarde 10% in OU, because there would be so many Pokemon that would beat it, it wouldn't even be funny. So 1,000 arrows is the only reason Zygarde is OU, and it's all good, and it is good, don't get me wrong, but it's only because of 1,000 arrows. So in terms of what legendary Pokemon we have, we actually really have the mythicals of Volcanion, like Biancy, Hoopa. None of those are really good Pokemon when it comes to being defensive. If we go over to Gen 9 OU, let's look at the difference here. We got Darkrai, which isn't really defensive, but it has crazy speed and special attack, right? So in terms of matching what the Megas are doing, it sort of is up there with them. We've got Enamorus, which is sort of similar. We got Heatran, great defensive Pokemon. We got Iron Treads, another great defensive Pokemon. We got Landorus. We've got Moltres and Ogerpon and Pecharunt and Tinglu and Zamazenta and Zapdos. And then you can go down to the lower tiers. You got like Latias, right? And Okidogi. And technically there's some more. Like I could go on. The point is that these guys have really high BST and they don't take a mega slot. However, in terms of high BST that doesn't take a mega slot, let's go down the list. We got Hoopa Unbound, Dragonite, and now we're down to the pseudo legendaries. Dragonite, Garchomp, Hoodra, Tranitar. We got Volcanion here, normal Diancie, Goodra, and then Hoopa? I guess technically Hoopa is a 600 Pokemon, even though it wastes so much of its BST into its attack stat. Metagross, Salamence, there we are. Those are the rest of the pseudo legendaries. And now we keep going down. It's just a bunch of megas, just a bunch of megas, just a bunch of megas. And finally, we got to a normal Pokemon that wasn't a pseudo legendary, and that's Florges. And nobody is looking at Florges and saying, whew, look at the BST on that guy. Right? And then we got Gyarados and Noivern and Vanillix and base Charizard. Right? That's the kind of BST disparity that we have. So you get one Pokemon on your team that gets a high BST. And then you have to choose between pseudo legendaries. And then after that, it's just trash in terms of stats. So this metagame really relies heavily on having a good Mega Pokemon and then having like a stat game. And so that brings me nicely into my fifth point, which is that in this metagame, it's mostly just a stats game and a coverage game. It's what moves can you learn, and what are your stats? What are your raw stats? If I want to choose a Pokemon over its competitors, I have to look at those stats because those come at a premium. There's not a lot of guys that are hitting those 580 BST totals, and a lot of them aren't even that well optimized outside of the Mega. So if I look at this metagame, we just did that, right? The BST's really high for Megas, and then there's the pseudo legendaries, and then there's everybody else. Now that's not that big of a deal because you only get one Mega, but then I have to fill in the rest of my guys based off of their typings or what moves they get, and that's really all they have going for them. So Skarmory, for example, is such a good Pokemon, not because this stat distribution, which only has one stat above 100, is so good, because no, that's not a good stat distribution if we're being real. It's because it has this unique typing of Steel Flying, which is sorely needed in a metagame with X-Control running around, right? And it has good move pool and good team utility. That means that Skarmory has very high usage because of the moves it knows and the typing it is. Let's go over to Gen 9 OU. What does Gen 9 OU have Legend ZA doesn't have? And what it has is unique mechanics. So many Pokemon have unique mechanics. Alomomola does something that nobody else can do, which is Wish, Flip Turn. Ceruledge has Bitter Blade, which is a really strong fire move with recovery. Cinderace has Court Change and technically Powerball, but mostly Court Change. Clefable is still hanging around. Corviknight is sort of filling the similar role of Skarmory, and so that role will never go away. In fact, when Corviknight comes into the metagame in the DLC, you will see it supplant Skarmory for the most part, unless it's Mega Skarmory. Darkrai has mostly just stats going on, if we're being real, similar with Deoxys. Dondozo is mostly just there for Unaware. But if we go down the list, a lot of these guys have unique things that nobody else can do. Garganacl has the Purifying Salt plus Salt Cure. Golden Go has the Good as Gold plus Make It Rain. Lamora has the Mortal Spin plus Toxic Debris. Gliscor has its Poison Heal nonsense going on. Hatterene has the Magic Bounce plus the Nuzzle, which is sort of annoying, among other things. Heatran has, of course, its unique typing, which isn't in the game. Iron has Tachyon Cutter, and all of the Iron guys have that Quark Drive ability, right? The ability to just come in and be faster because I got my booster energy. That's really annoying. King Gambit has the Supreme Overlord plus the Sucker Punch, which I suppose technically you could argue the Mega Emboar has, but that's your Mega Pokemon, and we're just talking about the Pokemon that aren't the Megas, right? You gotta get your Mega, and you get the 5 other guys. What are they gonna have? Landorus has that really good unique typing. Moltres has Flame Body, which is really good. Petron, of course, has the Poison Puppeteer plus its amazing typing, plus the Malignant Chain combo, which is really annoying. Suing Samurott comes in and clicks one move, which is Ceaseless Edge. Rillaboom comes in, clicks one move, which is Grass Glide. Raging Bolt comes in, clicks one move, which is Thunderclap. Tinglu has its Vessel of Ruin. None of these Pokemon can do what each other does. They're all really unique. There's very few Pokemon on this list that are here just for their stats. For example, Zamazenta. Yes, Dauntless Shield, but really any Iron Defense fighting type could do that. It's just the Zamazenta's stats are that good. So that's an exception to the rule. Mostly Pokemon that are here on this list are here because they can do something that nobody else can. Technically, you could say the same of this metagame, right? Aegislash has its stance change. Dragonite still is an extreme speed merchant, and Gourgeist has unique typing technically, but I would say Trevenant could do similar things. It's just that Gourgeist has better stats, a higher defense stat and HP, so it does a better job of taking extra drill sets than Trevenant. But frankly, I want to see somebody use Trevenant over Gourgeist. I think that would be sort of cool. And then, you could say, oh, Slowbro can teleport out. That's unique. Yeah, it is unique. But it's not unique in the same way as the other guys are, in the sense that it's adding holistic value to the entire thing. So the metagame is just more about like what moves can you learn, right? And what is your typing. And since they don't have to fill up their move slot with a bunch of unique moves that only I can learn, then it's okay, what general usage moves can I learn? And one of the best general usage moves to use is Thunder Wave. That's what we were driving to. This metagame has not a lot of unique moves. It's mostly generic moves, and Thunder Wave is a better option for a generic move to learn. The final note here, and it's one of the most important notes, is that a lot of Pokemon, they're trying to two-shot, right? So let's look at an example here. So let's say I have a Clefable against a Greninja, which is going to take some neutral Greninja because usually they're running a speed boosting nature, and let's say it's Choice Scarf, for example, so we don't have to worry about the Life Orb boost or whatever. And a lot of them are running Choice Scarf because it outspeeds things like +1 Dragonite, for example. So obviously, something like Gunk Shot, which a lot of them are running more physical Greninjas currently, that is going to two-shot even a Fizdev Clefable if it hits. Of course, the if it hits is the big fly in the ointment, but if it hits, yeah, it'll two-shot. Thunder Wave, of course, gives you a better chance of it two-shotting. Of course, if you hit it on switch end, then the Clefable really has no recourse. It's gonna have to switch out. Unfortunately for you, in this particular scenario, you are Choice Scarf with your Life Orb, then it's gonna be a lot better off because, of course, you just one-shot it, right? Got the Life Orb there, or at least it's a 50% chance to one-shot it. And of course, if it's Spadef, then you're gonna have an even better chance of one-shotting it. On the other hand, let's say that once again with Choice Scarf, and you I'm gonna put Choice Scarf here. Let's say that you don't do it on the switch end, but they switch in on you. Well, now you don't one-shot it. So if you wanted to go for the two-shot, if they're at full health, not the greatest option. Probably gonna want to switch out. Let's go for another example. Hydro Pump now on the switch in. If I am, well, technically you would be a poison type if you're Protean, right? In which case you could switch in. But if they have Soft Boil, they can just Soft Boil this off for at least one turn, and then they'll figure out what you are. Hydro Pump is something that is not quite a two-shot, even on Fizdev Clefable. If they are Thunder Waved, then you can roll, you can fish, right? You can fish for the full para, and then they can't Soft Boil you off, and that kind of thing is really nice. Let's look at Hisuian Gudra, something like this. Not all of them are running the Assault Vest, some of them are running the leftovers, so you'd have to take that into account. But Low Kick, really good chance of one-shotting, although this is a weird set. Let's say it's Fizdev, for example. Then Relaxed. That's probably a better set to run currently. Then yeah, technically this is a 2-hit KO, but you don't want to get hit by that heavy slam in return. And having them be paralyzed as well is really good. Another good example would be maybe a Skarmory. So if I'm running a Skarmory, this set is okay, I guess. Hydro Pump, that's a two-shot technically, but it's not the safest two-shot because you can miss. Dark Pulse, however, look at that, 44, 52%. If I just stay in and go for a Roost a bunch of times, and this has no Spadef, by the way, no Spadef at all. So let's say that I just stay in, Roost a couple times. Yeah, I could get flinched, but depending on what my win con is, I might be willing to accept that, or I might just body press you in return and you might just die. So a lot safer to go for this Dark Pulse if the Skarmory is Thunder Waved. And of course, if I go to a different Pokemon like Gyarados, I don't know what set it would be exactly. I'm gonna put Waterfall on, just because that's the standard one, right? Of course, this Waterfall isn't doing anything, so probably not the smartest idea to try to chip them down using Waterfall, if we're being real. But technically, if they're Thunder Waved and you have the Waterfall flinch chance, and they're like 45% or something, then that is potentially a win con you can play for. To get 1 or 2 flinches and you are golden. So the fact that you can go in and turn potential 2 or 3 shots into 2 shots because you got a free turn from a Thunder Wave, that is really valuable. So hitherto, our conversation sort of was limited to this idea that the special attackers are so potent, or the setup is so potent, I need a Thunder Waver to slow them down. And so that makes it sound like that's an idea that's favoring more the balance or the bulky offense Pokemon. But if I am the offensive guy, I also want Thunder Wave so that I can slow down maybe something that's faster than my fastest guy. Like maybe they have a Mega Delphox, or I have a Mega Delphox and they have a Mega Greninja. I want to slow down the Greninja. That way it can't outspeed my Mega Delphox. Or maybe, on the other hand, if they have a bunch of slow fat guys, I just want to flinch them down. Or I want to Thunder Wave hacks them down. And that kind of thing is also really valuable. And so that is as opposed to the Gen 9 metagame, where there's a lot of Pokemon here that would not get 2-shot no matter what. For example, Dondozo, by a physical attacker, never getting 2-shot by anything. Garganacl, of course, doesn't get Thunder Waved, and Gliscor also doesn't get Thunder Waved, and Great Tusk doesn't get Thunder Waved. These are all great Fizz Def and Spidef guys. Iron Treads, likewise, does not get Thunder Waved, and really is annoying in that regard. King Glue also doesn't get Thunder Waved, but even if it could, it also wouldn't get 2-shot by basically anything. And so there's a lot of guys in a normal metagame where you have a lot of defensive counterplay, and they don't really get 2-shot by much of anything. Even Corviknight has better bulk overall than compared to Skarmory. So because Pokemon like Clefable and Skarmory, and if we go down the list a bit more, we've got even something like Vanitar or maybe Volcanion, that, yeah, they can take a hit or two, but if they're Thunder Waved, they're gonna not really take those 2 hits. And now they're just gonna get 2-shot. And they have no way of hitting you back because they're Thunder Waved, and then, you know, the yellow color comes into play. So really, between slowing down the fast guys and letting the fast guys get the upper hand on the fat guys, this metagame absolutely favors Thunder Wave. So how then would we stop this or fix it? How would we make it so that Thunder Wave is no longer as good? Well, a few things would need to happen. First of all, we have to balance out the metagame a bit. Getting rid of some of the fast guys would really help. For example, if you get rid of Mega Greninja, and even really, frankly, Greninja in general, very oppressive Pokemon. That's so annoying. If you get rid of that, then of course other Pokemon like Mega Delphox are just going to rise up to the top of the speed tier list, right? So we need to add in another level of Pokemon. And that's something that needs to happen in the DLC. Will it happen? I don't know. I don't remember all the Pokemon that are supposed to come into this metagame. But if we get a bunch of Pokemon that are fast and strong, but they aren't Megas, then I can have those on my team too, right? And then I can have a team that's more well balanced. Whereas right now I just have a team of one really overpowered guy and then a bunch of guys trying to keep up with the overpowered guy. And like, please don't kill us. And then maybe a Garchomp if you're lucky, right? That's basically what the metagame is. We need to have something that could be a Choice Scarf Pokemon that can come in and outspeed and be a good Choice Scarf Pokemon, like Mega Gallade, or Choice Scarf Gallade is what I used in my most previous video. And that was an okay Choice Scarfer, as we saw in the video. But you want something maybe that has U-turn, for example. Something like Diggersby, base 78 speed. Not so great even as a Choice Scarfer when you have to face off against Greninja. Especially when Greninja itself is running the Choice Scarf. So we need to have more balance in the metagame so that Thunder Wave isn't as valuable. We also need to make it so that Poison is more of a valuable status effect, and that Burn is more of a valuable status effect. The best way to do that is to make it so that Clefable is less of a good Pokemon. Because Clefable right now can just come in and absorb everything. So I think in order to do that, first of all, let's make water types better. One of the ways to do that, of course, is banning Greninja, because then if you ban Greninja, then other water types can maybe be better. Let's add some more electric types into the tier, because then Gyarados will be threatened and won't be as good. If Gyarados isn't as good, then the water types can now come in and click Scald, and Will-O-Whispers can come in and Will-O-Wisp, right? That's the kind of thing that you need to do to get that to happen. And then Burn becomes more valuable. Poison needs to have Pokemon like Toxapex come back, right? Nobody wants to see Toxapex come back. But for example, if Toxapex did come back, it could have Toxic, Scald, knock off or liquidation or something, and then recover. And then that would be something that could get progress on a team, but then would not necessarily be passive like Vaporeon, and it would still have this Toxic, right? Skarmory, of course, would wall that, but again, we're talking about a metagame where there are more electric attackers, and then having good fire types maybe would be nice too, besides Mega Delphox. But right now, really, most Pokemon in the tier can Mega, and that's sort of the joke when you're looking at a team. You're like, oh, which Pokemon is the Mega? You have no clue, because 5 out of 6 Pokemon could Mega, and so unless it's a Pokemon like Altaria or Absol or something where it's like, well, okay, you wouldn't run that Pokemon if it were Mega. Mega Garchomp can be a Mega. And look at all this OU by technicality. Mega Clefable is probably not going to be it. But Mega Excadrill is valid. Mega Garchomp is valid. Mega Gyarados is valid. Mega Scizor is valid. Mega Tranitar technically is valid. Mega Skarmory is valid. And the list goes on. Mega Dragonite, right? And so since so many of these Pokemon can Mega Evolve now, but only one of them can Mega Evolve, we need just a bunch of these guys that are really strong but don't have a Mega Evolution, and I don't know how many of those we're going to get. But we need to get more of those guys in the metagame. Once we have strong defensive and strong offensive options for teams outside of the Mega slot, and then a couple of good guys like normal Greninja with Nasty Plot, then we can start seeing more balanced team compositions, ones that don't rely so heavily on Skarmclef to keep everything together, tied together with duct tape, trying to avoid getting swept, mowed down by the really strong Mega Pokemon. Because that's all the Thunder Wave is doing, really, just keeping you from getting swept or helping you sweep. But anyway, that will be it for today's video, and I'll catch you guys next time.